Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the John Talks podcast. This is a segment that I'm going to call Down to Business. So in Down to Business, I want to talk about starting a business, operating a business systems that work, things that I've found along the way that have been really helpful to running Aquavita and a number of the other businesses that I've built up and supported. So let's start from the top. Let's start from the origin story of Aquavita. And I want to demystify the process and life of an entrepreneur, because in our culture, I feel like sometimes there's a little bit of glitz and glamour put on top of that may either intimidate people from trying something and pursuing their dreams, or it may make them overly optimistic when they're starting that for the first time. So here we go from the top. So around 14, 15 years ago when we started Aquavita, first of all, you've got to understand this was in the middle of the housing market collapse and a variety of other things that were happening in the economy that resulted in a massive recession in the economy. My wife, Jessica, and I, and our business partner, Michelle, we were all working for another agency at the time. And we had a handful of clients that we really enjoyed working with, but that company didn't really have established core values, a customer avatar that represented, like, this is the type of customer that we wanted to work with. And so they tended to take anybody that had money and a heartbeat. And that wasn't very satisfying to us. So there were a few different kind of ingredients that came together all at one time. So I was a member of Rotary International at that time, a service club, and we have people come in and speak at lunchtime. And there was a missionary by the name of David Stevenson who was doing work in Bolivia in South America, specifically to bring water and other basic services to communities that were in the Altiplano, which is at 14,000 feet elevation. So potable water is a really big challenge for them. And when he came and spoke at our club, he talked about the infant mortality rate down there and child mortality rate, and how 1 in 5 children were passing away before the age of 5 due to microbacteria in the water supply because they didn't have potable water, and their sewers and toilets and things like that, such as they were basically right next to their water supply, and it was contaminating it and causing all kinds of health problems for families down there. So he really told this in a compelling way. He had a story that really tugged at our heartstrings. And so Jess, Michelle, and I all sat down and kind of went, how could we help this organization to raise money? At that time, the next big project was the well that they had down there needed to be improved to produce more clean water and to become more sustainable for that community. And they also needed better sanitation services down there, like compostable toilets, ash toilets, things like that, that were controllable, removed from the water supply, and so on. So we worked with David to create a brand and build a website and do a marketing campaign and assist with fundraising. And long story short, we raised $90,000. And that, at the time, was enough to put in clean water and sanitation for 2,000 families in the Altiplano. So David invited me out to coffee shortly after that. And he said, hey, Jonathan, in Bolivia, they speak Spanish in a lot of the places down there. And there's an expression when they're looking for a place to put a new village in that high altitude area. Water is so scarce. And the expression is Aquavita. Where there's water, there's life. So I was vibrating, as you can imagine, coming out of that meeting. I was just so excited that we'd had such an impact and our work directly connected to making people's lives better. So I went home and I talked to my wife and then also to Michelle and said, what if every client that we worked with was like this? We kind of handpicked them. We made sure that they aligned with our values and the difference that we wanted to make in the world. We got to help them with our creative abilities, with our abilities as marketers. And what would we call that business? And of course, I mean, we couldn't come up with a better name than what that missionary had given us, which was Aquavita. So that's how we got our name. So that's one thing that was going on at the time. We were kind of in our spare time helping people as we could. The recession was another ingredient that was happening. And it was in November, December, and it had been 5 or 6 weeks since we'd been paid. There were just a variety of different operational problems and cultural problems in the company that we were working for at the time. And one day, the owner of that business pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Jonathan, I can't pay you. I mean, you guys are profitable," meaning Jess, Michelle, and I, our marketing department was profitable. You all are profitable, but I owe some money, and I can't pay you all what I owe you. And what can we do about this? And so I negotiated the rights to the clients that we wanted to take with us. And fortunately, I was able to go to each one of those clients and explain what was going on, and they enjoyed working with us enough and saw value in what we did enough that all of the clients that we approached that we wanted to keep went with us when we started Aquavita. So that was a great blessing. But still, we were in our mid to late 20s and we hadn't been paid in 5 or 6 weeks. And when you're in your mid to late 20s, you don't have, or at least most people I feel in that age demographic, don't have piles and piles of cash that they're sitting on. If you do, good for you. Awesome. You're killing it out there. But we didn't. We had an emergency fund, but it was really starting to dwindle away. And so we were thinking, man, how do we make it? How do we get by? We just started this fledgling business. We had taken some of our clients with us, and cash flow was starting to kick up for that. So I will say, it takes passion and purpose to get past the early stages of a business because it's tough. And you basically make no money when you get started. Most people don't. In fact, I've heard that the number one reason for businesses in the United States failing is undercapitalization and not having enough money to operate out of the gate, which we'll talk about at a later time. But we just started this business, and I knew that I needed help. I needed professionals around me that were skilled in ways that I was not, and details, I can do them, but man, it just saps the creative energy out of me, and it doesn't leave me a lot to work with when it's now time to take that creativity and apply it to my clients. So I knew that I needed somebody that could help with bookkeeping and taxes and all of those things, just to, somebody that was educated and current on what was going on, somebody that was ethical that I could trust. I knew that I needed a payroll company because the company that we'd worked for prior to that had not been consistent with payroll. I mean, sometimes we would deposit our checks and they'd bounce. We weren't sure if our payroll taxes were being paid, a variety of different things like that. So I knew I needed a payroll company. And I also knew that I needed a lawyer because I wanted someone that was an expert on setting up businesses and somebody that could teach me how contract law worked and agreements worked and negotiation worked. And lucky for me, I had a lawyer friend from the Rotary Club, which, by the way, if you're looking to establish your professional network, finding service organizations like the Rotary Club, where it's not just a tips club, meaning you exchange leads with each other, but this is an organization of business owners and leaders who share common values. And Rotary is a very good place for doing that and building your professional network. So I had my lawyer friend from that, and I had a payroll company recommendation, I think also from somebody in Rotary that recommended me to them. And so I went to a payroll company. I got all that set up. Now, this is in the first week of Aquavita, by the way. I was like, what are the problems that I've seen in other businesses? Well, I've seen businesses struggle with doing their payroll stuff, with legal stuff, and with money tracking and bookkeeping. So I wanted to make sure I solved that as quickly as possible. And my payroll company, fortunately, had a recommendation for a really good accountant. And her name is Mary Mosier. Shout out to Mary. She's been with us for forever, since we started Aquavita. And unfortunately, she's going to retire this year or next year, and it makes me super sad because I love Mary. But anyway, it's very important as a leader that you surround yourself with people that shore up your weaknesses. So in my case, because I'm a creative, I'm an ideator, I love the visioning and creative and marketing process. I love communications. I don't love doing the detail stuff. And so I needed people that were detail oriented around me. But you may be a detail oriented person, and you may find that you really like to do the business formation stuff, the bookkeeping stuff, whatever it is within the business that's related to detail that you enjoy. And if that's the case, your needs might be going out and finding people that can complement you that are creative problem solvers, lateral thinkers, communicators, good salespeople, that kind of thing. But the point is, know what your weaknesses are and where you need support, and do your best very early in the process to go out and find those people and surround yourselves with them, because they will help to protect you and lift you up in those early stages of the business when you're vulnerable and raw from everything that you're going through. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was I think that there's often a perception that entrepreneur equals you're making a lot of money, and that is just not true, especially in the very beginnings of a first business, or maybe your second or third business that you're operating. And especially if you're an entrepreneur that's in your 20s or 30s or something like that, businesses take more than they make in the early stages. It's extraordinarily rare for the opposite to be true. And I'm going to tell you a couple of funny stories about that. So for the first 3 or 4 years at Aquavita, what resonated in my mind was my accountant saying to me, well, Jonathan, you need to at least pay yourself $1,000 a month because, first of all, you need to make money to survive. And second of all, it might raise a red flag if you never take income out of the business. And so, I was like, okay, I'll pay myself $500 per pay period. But to be honest, there were a lot of months where that did not happen. And in fact, I had team members early in that process that made much more than I did. So the people that were working for me made a multiple of what I did. And there were a couple of times in that first 3 or 4 years, like, for example, God's always been good to us. He's always provided what we need when we need it. But in my Rotary Club, there is a tradition called Cut the Ace, and it's a way for fundraising for local causes and also making it kind of like a fun competitive thing. And they have a deck of cards and they have raffle tickets. And every week you buy a raffle ticket or multiple raffle tickets. And at the end of the Rotary meeting, they draw a ticket and they call somebody up there. And you get to pull one of the cards out of the deck. And if it's the Ace of Spades, you get to split whatever's in the pot 50-50. So if there's $1,000 in the pot at that point, and you've been drawing cards for several weeks and nobody's gotten it, and the pot's grown and grown, you get half of $1,000, $500. The other $500 goes towards charitable causes. So the pot had grown pretty good at this point. I think we were maybe halfway through the deck of cards. I think we had $2,000 or $3,000 in the pot. Normally, I didn't buy raffle tickets because the whole kind of gambling mentality thing is just really not my thing. But I had bought one this day. And they called my name. So I went up there, and believe it or not, I pulled the Ace of Spades. And I was like, holy cow, man. And everybody's, razzing me. I can't believe you got it. Oh, patting you on the back. And I remember one guy coming up to me and saying, you better buy your wife a diamond with that. I think my cut was maybe $1,500. And I was just like, thank God, because payroll was around the corner. And I really needed the money just to make payroll. And then another time, there was it still is an organization called Beachbody. I think they're calling themselves Body now. But back in their heyday, when they were doing P90X and Insanity and all that good stuff, hundreds or thousands of people would submit their transformation pictures and their transformation story, and they would once a month draw a winner, and quarterly draw a winner, and then annually draw a big winner. And I just happened to win one of the monthly transformation stories, and they sent me $1,000. Well, guess where that $1,000 went? Payroll. So first 3 or 4 years of the business, you've really got to have passion for what you're doing and who you're helping, and purpose. For me, that has been the secret sauce, because there are times, I remember maybe 3 years in, just lying in bed, looking at the ceiling, talking to my wife and just saying like, okay, we'll stick it out for one more winter. It's like a survival movie. It really was. We'll stick it out for one more winter. And, if we don't make a certain amount of money and replenish our savings and so on, we're just going to call it quits and go get other jobs. I mean, it was tough, and what kept us going through those difficult times is that we really did love what we did. We loved collecting stories, collecting wisdom, telling stories, creating beautiful things, and then seeing the results of those things, seeing the people that we helped impacted by it. One early story that really lit our fires was there was a piano restoration company here in town called Bill Miller Piano. And at that time, they were really struggling. And we came in and we rebuilt their website and did other marketing things for them. And this was still fairly early on in search engines and all of that good stuff. And so we made those changes and put some lead generation systems in place for them. And a couple of months into this, I remember calling her to ask her a question about something, and she picked up, and I could hear like ocean sounds in the background. And I'm like, after asking my business questions, I'm like, where are you? And I think they were in Hawaii or, someplace with a beach, but she was like, yeah, we're at the beach and we're on vacation. And I'm like, wow, okay. The last time that I'd had a conversation with him, things were still pretty tough. And I was like, how are things going in the business? And she's like, oh man, they're doing so well. Everything's turned around and it's really exploding. And, we're always busy. And, I asked her, hey, did what we did for you cause that? And she's like, oh, it was the thing that caused it. And, I just remember this lady and her husband, I think they were in their 60s or 70s at the time. They'd been doing this their whole lives. They'd really worked hard to build up this business. And I just really wanted them to have a good turn in their story. And when they told me that, and I knew that I'd been a part of that, it lit my fire. And it really kept me going and gave me even more drive to grow what we were doing and to be better in our craft. So, okay. Another thing that I will say, if you're early in the business and you're getting started, that's the whole point of this particular show is early in the business, getting started. What do you do? All that good stuff. Find mentors. And the way that I did that was by finding these service clubs, by, if you're not part of a club like Rotary, maybe find them in your church. And for me, specifically, my best mentors have been gray hairs, as I would call them. So people that are in their 60s or 70s, they're at the height of their learning and their wisdom and their career. They've been doing whatever it is that they're doing for decades. They've got experience in life and marriage and relationships and business and money and all this kind of stuff, and look for signs of success. And I'm not talking about like a Lamborghini or anything like that, but do they look happy? Do they look healthy? Does their family like them? Are they still married? Things like that. Do they have a healthy relationship with God? And so I would look for these people and I would invite them to breakfast. And I honestly can't remember where the idea of the mentor breakfast came from. Probably some other smarter person or book that I read, but it's been a life changer for me. Many of the people that I've just described are busy. They have businesses, they have families, they have investments to manage. One of the only times that you can speak to them is quite often early in the morning. And after doing a few of these, I realized, man, it is so satisfying to get up before the start of the day to go sit down with somebody that has similar values and that is further along in the journey than you are, and just ask them as many questions as you have, share a good meal or some coffee with them. And it's just such an encouraging and uplifting way to start the day. If you're lucky enough to find good mentors and good teachers, take lots of notes. So I use a small journal that fits easily in my hand. It's light. It's by a company called Poppin, but you can use any journal, anything that you're comfortable writing with. You can take notes on your phone, but whatever you do, I would suggest that you take notes. I do think that it's beneficial to have a notebook or a paper journal, because writing things down, I've heard over and over again, it cements it in your memory more effectively than if you're typing it on a phone or doing speech to text or something like that. And I also think that when you pull out the phone in the middle of a conversation, it puts up kind of a barrier between you and the person that you're talking to. So, have as few barriers as possible in those conversations. So find a good mentor. And then the next thing that I would say is leaders are readers. And I've always enjoyed reading for personal growth, but it really started to kick off for me when I would meet with these various mentors. And almost all of them would end our conversation by saying, or maybe not end it, but even in the middle of the conversation, say, you need to read this book. Go read this thing, go find this thing, go learn from this person. And I started picking it up and reading it. And sure enough, I could see from what I knew of their stories, I could see where they'd applied the advice in the book and how it had made a difference for them. And it really started to click with me that when you read a book or you have these mentor meetings, it's like accelerating your personal development by years in some cases. Like you may be getting the wisdom that it took somebody else to take 20 years to accumulate and refine. Books are the same way. So, books, if they're well-written business books or personal growth books or marketing books, they've taken ideas that they've seen that work in the real world and they distill it and crystallize it down to its pure essence. And I'll recommend a few books to you from people that I really admire. So one of my early mentors was Julie Guy. Shout out to Julie. So Julie started Guy Engineering here in town and grew it from a small handful of engineers, I want to say like less than 6, to, last time I knew they had 30 or 40 engineers here in town, which is absolutely incredible. And when I was asking her for advice, one of the things that she said was, go read Good to Great by Jim Collins. And so I went out and read that. And that was a phenomenal book. So if you have a good product, a good service, a good company, if you're a good leader, but you want to be great, that is a very good book for reading that. It gives you systems and processes for analyzing yourself and seeing what you need to do in order to bring things to the next level from good to great. So another few that I'll recommend from early on, a good foundational one is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So that is by, his name eludes me at the moment, but you definitely need to pick that one up. Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So that's about becoming more efficient and effective and managing your time better and prioritizing things better, which is really great when you're first starting out in business. And then I would also suggest Entre Leadership by Dave Ramsey. That's kind of after he ran his organization for 25 years, he wrote a book that is kind of the playbook for how they do things at his business. And, getting 25 years of experience in a few hours of reading is not a bad trade. So I would strongly suggest that. And then Fix This Next by Mike Michalowicz, and anything by Mike Michalowicz, actually. He's been jokingly referred to as the patron saint of business owners for good reason. And his books address a specific problem within your business and give you systems for doing that. So like Fix This Next is actually, it gives you evaluation criteria to look at all of the problems that you're dealing with and to go, okay, that one is the closest problem to the foundation of the business. And the foundation needs to be fixed and shored up before I work on anything else. So you fix that problem and then you kind of move up to the next problem up the pyramid. And it's a really great book for helping you to very quickly determine what the next most important thing is for you to focus on. The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz is also excellent. And that one it gives you a system for grading your clients and determining okay, these are the people that I want to work with and that I want more of. And it gives you a more detailed understanding of why those are good clients for you, why you want to work with them more. It gives you definitions on all of that good stuff. So we use these things daily in our business. We actively use the pumpkin plan every month. We run that system. Every time we're talking about the next things to fix in our business, we use the Fix This Next methodology. There's another book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, and 4DX for short. And we use that scoreboard every Monday when we're doing team meetings to determine, are we doing a good job? Are we meeting our goals? What are the most important things that each team member is going to be working on this week? And it's just been a tremendous blessing to us. So that one is called 4DX, or the 4 Disciplines of Execution. Okay, so that covers a lot of what I had to talk about on starting a business. Next time, we will get deeper into operating a business and balancing family and work life and business systems that work and all that good stuff. So hope you all enjoyed this. Hope it's been valuable to you. If you like the show, please subscribe. We are on iTunes and anywhere else that you get your podcasts. And we will see you next time.